And then there's the area of corporate kindness, and that's an interesting area that we get into that not a lot of people would have thought of. We throw like this kind of oddball question out there. We might retool it at some point, but it's a great little question anyway. Does your business have any parking problems? And people go, what does that have to do with corporate kindness? Well, really what we're getting at is, does your company have a green transport plan? Do you have awesome parking spaces put out for employees that carpool to work? That's a nice thing that a company can do. It's an act of corporate kindness that affects the way your employees view your values and the company as a whole. Do you ever have company trips? Yes, we do, or no, we don't is the answer, but are you locally, sure, or local drink fests or whatever. But if your company holds company trips, really, are you doing ecotourism during those trips? Or are you just taking your top salespeople out and having a good time in a non-eco location? Are you taking a bus to get there? Are you taking a plane to get there? What are the environmental impacts? What are the cost-saving measures of going with a bus versus going with plane travel for everybody? What's the perception of employees? All that's important stuff to get into, but all of it has an environmental impact. And if you position it with your employees that the reason that you chose this place and the reason that you're doing things this way is due to environmental issues, well, a lot of times that'll help you lower the cost of a trip rather than buying a bunch of plane tickets for everybody in ways that your employees might actually respect you for. So that can double up as a cost-saving way if you're doing it. Does your company support carbon offsetting? This is a big area of environmental impact. And basically what you try to do is you kind of say, okay, what's all of our environmental impact in one thing, and then how do we pay for it? How do we pay for our sins, so to speak? Carbon offsetting is one interesting way to do that. Tie that to the environmental need, and then you've got a more compelling case. Based on the best available science that's out there right now, and this is the most current international report, and I believe it's from the big one that comes out every couple of years now with all the scientists involved, that between 15 and 37%, so that's got to be their number, because I would never think in those terms, between 15 and 37% of all plant and animal species will become extinct by 2050 if global warming is not addressed now. How's that for a number? 15 to 37% of all plant and animal species will become extinct if we don't address it now. That means that we're, as a species, we are single-handedly unconnecting the fabric of life. If we look at life like a big weave or a big spider web, all interconnected in all different sorts of pieces, we are doing our best right now to pull life apart. Would I wish that that was a scare tactic? I really did wish that that was a scare tactic. No, that's our best available science telling us that today. So carbon offsetting can be a real strong way to go out and do that. Now, can companies monetize that? Yes, it's tricky, but they can do it. Larger ones are already selling the amount of, well, this isn't carbon offsetting, but it's very similarly tied in. If businesses are reducing their amount of carbon today that they're using by going to green energy suppliers and by affecting all the other things that they do, they're actually able to capture that difference statistically and then sell that as a credit on the Chicago Climate Exchange. That usually is, big organizations that are doing that because, in order to have the kinds of credits that make sense to be selling. But basically the way to look at it is, a ton of CO2, per ton of CO2, and a ton of CO2 is easy to get in terms of savings, is where the credits start. So you got to sell those off in blocks on the Chicago Climate Exchange. But even if you're not doing that, even if you're just paying a percentage of your profits out to an environmental nonprofit that does a tree planting program or or ones like Gecko that tell businesses and let them know how to lower their environmental impact across a grand scale. That type of CO2 offsets are not just important; they're vital at this point. So do have companies think about that. Do they donate to environmental nonprofits? Do they have their employees volunteer hours during work time? Maybe 1 day a year, 2 days a year, maybe once every quarter. That would be really nice for environmental cleanups. That's a fantastic way of letting your employees know what your values are, and giving them an opportunity to get out of the office, do some good in the world.